When I was 23, I ended up doing some relief work in the Darfur that led me to the military. So that was a big monumental moment in my life where I just was kind of drifting and not heading anywhere good. A lot of people serve in the military, and some of those people serve in the Special Forces, but not many, if any, do that and then go to college later and play football.
I was flying, yeah, running down a dream that never would come to me. Working on a mystery, go wherever it leads. Running down a train.
And while I was in college playing ball, I was still in the Guard, in the National Guard. So I was still deploying in the summers. And I think that's one of the most unique and interesting times of my life for sure. Kind of going back and forth from battlefield to ball field. Even when life's at its best, there's always curveballs and challenges and things that you struggle with, obstacles you got to overcome. But I guess that's what makes it great. So I did an internship at a production company, and I was just making coffee, getting lunch, and kind of learning about development and how it all works. And that was just 8-9 years ago. And then 4 or 5 years after that, I did it. Made my first film, and it's a special project to me. And luckily, I had a great team around me, and people like Sylvester Stallone that are willing to put their name on it. Like, that's pretty special. I always want to live, I think, this way, where I'm able to flex and shift career trajectories like completely if need be, or if something of interest is there for me.
When this comes out, all of everything will have happened in terms of election. And what does that mean? Does it mean more chaos, less chaos, probably more?
It is like disheartening to look at our options right now, in my opinion. It's just mudslinging. It's embarrassing as an American, as a veteran, to know that we fought for this. I think to acknowledge that our experiences in life dictate our opinions, dictate how we vote, how we, what we're passionate about, and what we become angry about, what we care about.
The Patina'd Podcast is about the earned wisdom found in pain. It's about chasing failure, catching it, and using that as an opportunity. It's about scar tissue and sinew. It's about stretch marks and dented fenders and refusing to hide them. It's about pushing our insecurities and shame to the forefront instead of behind us. Instead of seeing rust as something that compromises a structure's integrity, we choose to see it as the grit that builds character. This is the Patina'd Podcast. All right. Well, welcome to another episode of the Patina'd Podcast. So today my guest is Nate Boyer. And so for the sake of time, I know you're ultra busy, Nate. Like you got a ton of things going on. If I were to explain kind of your whole, that everything that you've done is going to take the whole time. So let me try to sum it up real quick because I want to kind of get into more meat. All right. So I'd say you're a Renaissance man. I don't know if you've been called that before, but
Been called it. I don't know if I am.
Yeah. Okay. So a film producer, a writer, a director, and actor. Recently completed your first 100-mile ultra, which I'm an ultra guy too. So that's awesome.
Nice.
And then out of high school, you worked on shrimping boats.
A fishing boat down in San Diego.
Fishing boats. Okay, that was Forrest Gump. That was the other Renaissance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very similar. Very similar.
Yeah, very similar lives. Yeah. So then you joined the Army. In the Army, you went to Special Forces, Green Beret. After your military career and being in combat, you decided to go to college and walk on to the college football team at Texas, which is, it's a small college. Not many people have heard of it. It's very few people go there, but
little
Texas.
Public school. Yeah.
So, and you decide to walk on at this, tiny little college called Texas University. And you never played football in your life, but you decide I'm just going to do this thing and be a football player. So then you walk on and you make the team and you become the long snapper, which is incredible. And then that leads you into being picked up by the Seahawks, which is an arch nemesis of mine, being a San Francisco fan.
I'm a Niner fan too, man.
You are too? Okay.
Yeah, I grew up in the Bay. I'm a huge Niner fan. So that was a tough one.
Yeah.
It was either the Seahawks or the Rams, though. So, like, I mean, come on.
Oh, yeah. Either way, it's going to be a nemesis. But at that time, it was Pete Carroll. So, if you're going to be under a head coach, then that'd be a pretty cool head coach. All Niner fans, please forgive me for saying that. And so, yeah, you had that experience, and that led you into this really cool experience where you had a tie-in with Colin Kaepernick. So there's your tie-in with the Niners as well, other than being a fan. But you had this important, I think, from a cultural context standpoint and from a historical standpoint, important play and narrative within what Colin Kaepernick was doing, initially sitting on the bench during the national anthem to eventually having a conversation with you and deciding, okay, I'm going to kneel instead. And so that's pretty amazing. So you have this thread going out through all these historical events that are pretty cool. Let's see. Anything else I'm missing here? Is there anything else I'm missing in that? Like you've
I mean, everybody, it doesn't matter whose life you're talking about. There's people done a lot of stuff. So there's always going to be something, I broke my arm when I was 4. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff. Nah, but I mean, you hit some big ones there. I mean, the biggest one, I think, well, honestly, when I was 23, I ended up doing some relief work in the Darfur that led me to the military. So that was a big sort of like a monumental moment in my life where I just was kind of drifting and not heading anywhere good. And then it shifted quite a bit. But then otherwise, really a lot of people serve in the military, and some of those people serve in the Special Forces, but not many, if any, do that and then go to college later and play football. And while I was in college playing ball, I was still in the Guard, in the National Guard. So I was still deploying in the summers. And I think that's one of the most unique and interesting times of my life for sure. Something I look back on and, obviously there's stressful circumstances a bit, especially with going to war and playing football even. Like, it's fun, but it's Texas. Like, the people, it matters down here, you got 102,000 people in the stands, and it's, it gets pretty wild. And there's a lot of pressure there, even though it's at the end of the day, nobody's lives on the line. So that kind of going back and forth from battlefield to ball field and, in my early 30s, really, that was probably the most unique, and looking back on it, most enjoyable, while also, life, even when life's at its best, there's always curveballs and challenges and things that, you struggle with, obstacles you got to overcome. But I guess that's what makes it great.
All right, just a quick pause. Firstly, I want to thank you. I want to thank all the people that have been subscribing. The show has grown. So I have a 1-week challenge for you, the listener, to do something daily that's going to put yourself in a situation to fail or be rejected or do something that sounds miserable in a good way. Don't be vague about this challenge. Sit down, write it down with a pen and paper, and it's likely something that you want to already do for yourself. This could be asking out that barista that you think is cute. This could be taking a cold plunge every day or a cold shower. This could be like calling up people that you need to reconcile with or ask forgiveness from. This could be just starting up that daily practice that you've wanted to do for a long time, like journal and prayer. This could mean going and getting that free trial at the nearest jiu-jitsu class. This could mean getting creative in the kitchen and trying different meals and different ideas. Or it could mean just meal prepping. So there are a ton of different things that you can do that helps build up your ability to take on normal misery and become more resilient. And if you already did this challenge last week, then go ahead and start a new challenge.
or continue to progress off the challenge that you did last week. For example, if it was trying to run a further distance than you've ever ran, you can continue to progress that forward. Or if it was something else from an exercise perspective, like doing 500 push-ups a day, you can progress that to then 550 or 600 push-ups a day. Or you can just take on something totally new that you're interested in. The number one rule is this can't cause lasting harm to yourself or someone else. So don't do anything stupid. This all has to be based in the idea of building yourself up in a healthy way, which leads into the second rule, which is this has to push up against your avoidance. This has to push up against something that you're avoiding to do for yourself. Again, that is healthy for you. That's the challenge. Let's keep normalizing the idea of chasing failure, seeking it out, and pushing ourselves in ways that we never thought was imaginable. Thanks. Enjoy the rest of the episode.
Yeah, but what makes you unique other than having all these things that you've done and taken on, all these cool things that like someone could kind of rest on their laurels with one of those things that you've done, but you do it, you wring it out, like you're wringing out any leftover water left in that sponge, and then you move on to something else incredible and cool and something of interest. And I think that makes you pretty unique, where you see something of interest and then you go and you pursue it wholeheartedly. I was talking with, my last episode that just came out was with Sean Taylor, and he's a Canadian armed forces guy, and he's similar to you, where he's done all these different things. And his mindset is, constantly be a white belt, put on a white belt in something and challenge yourself in a new thing. And I think that's pretty unique, because taking on new things is terrifying, and terror taps into the ego in a way that the ego does not like. And so leaning into that and taking it on anyway, like wholeheartedly, is impressive.
Well, yeah, no, I appreciate that. I think that makes a lot of sense, the way he worded it, because all of those things, the military and football and filmmaking, I guess, those three things specifically that I feel like have been sort of my occupations that I took seriously anyway. All of those things, I was brand new to them when they began. Like the military is a little more obvious because you can't really practice military. I mean, you can practice, I guess, shooting a gun and some stuff like that. But until I, joined, I hadn't really done much of that. And it wasn't something I was planning on doing. I wasn't preparing for it. So once I went to basic training, I was the ultimate white belt, But then with football, it's like, you can practice it and you can play it as a young person and you can play it in high school and all that stuff. But I didn't play football until I got to Texas. So I was absolutely a white belt there. Played other sports. And when I knew I wanted to try out, it was probably a year before I went to Texas. So I started training for it and trying to learn how to, play the game, learn the game a little bit. But then the position I ended up playing, I never had even messed with until my sophomore year at Texas, when I realized I wasn't going to get on the field as a safety. And then with the filmmaking, it's like a dream I had. I was interested in it way back at 19 years old, before the military and before football. But all of a sudden, I was, I guess, 34 and the military and football were over. And I was like, I still had that interest. So I did an internship at a production company, and I was just making coffee and getting lunch and listening on phone calls when I was allowed to, reading scripts here and there and kind of learning about development and how it all works. But I was, absolutely a white belt there too. Just didn't know what I was even doing. And that was just, 8-9 years ago. And then after 4 or 5 years after that, I I did it and made my first film. I don't know if it's any good, but it's doing well. People are seeing it. Some people enjoy it. So that's good.
And that was MVP, right?
MVP. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was, it's a special project to me. And it was, a lot of lessons learned on your first one, but luckily I had a great team around me, and, people like Sylvester Stallone that are willing to put their name on it. Like, that's pretty special. So So yeah, but I mean, that all spoke to us just with not a lot of money, just trying to figure it out, just make it happen, just do it, just go. Because you're not going to get the next belt if you don't sort of go for it with, with the white belt. So, so yeah, that's sort of how that all works for me. It's like, you just gotta show up and try. And that's more than most people are willing to do. Most people will just kind of talk about it or dream about it or critique it on somebody else, that's going for it, instead of just do it. And even if it fails or it doesn't work out or it's not what you envisioned originally, it'll start you down the path anyway. And then if you're not into it, if it's not something that truly makes you happy, then do something else. I mean, you can always pivot, People are afraid to shift, or they think, oh, I got my degree in X, so I have to do X. And it's just, that's the lie they tell us. It's not true. You can do whatever you want, and it can change. And mine probably will. I'm 43 now, and I'll probably do 3 other careers. I don't know. I don't feel like it right now. Like I'm very passionate about storytelling. I do love doing that. So that's something that I'm, pretty focused on right now.
So that was going to be my first big question for you, was how? Like, like how do you even begin to do this thing that you seem to have in this resilience or this mental toughness that you have that allows you just to be able to jump into something and know going into it, like, if this doesn't work, I'll just find something else, and almost have like a peace with it. Like, because the way I would define mental toughness, I guess just toughness in general, is the ability to call an audible at the line, right? Like the ability to shift when things need to be shifted and just change and adapt. Like, we could look at businesses that when you and I were kids and are in high school, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, right? Like no mental toughness there, right? Inability to flex and adapt. And then they got taken over. But from a human standpoint, if you're to look at mental toughness, then it is what you're portraying here is like, okay, I've accomplished what I wanted in this particular domain. Now I'm going to adapt to something else. So how do you show up and just do it? Like, was it a skill set you've always had, or is it something that you had to learn over time?
Yeah, definitely not a skill set I always had. I mean, I never lacked for effort in doing things, especially sports growing up. I kind of lacked for effort in school. I didn't really work that hard there, but I wasn't passionate about it. And that's tough, because you do need, like, not everybody has to go to college or whatever, but if it's something that requires that level of education, you need to put that time into, put that work in. I mean, I learned how to sacrifice much later. That was through the military. But I think a big thing that's important is awareness, right? Like a level of awareness of what's working, what's not. But you can't really achieve awareness without humility and like trying to take a step back outside of yourself and looking at the situation objectively, where you're like, all right, if this was somebody else in my shoes and they're looking at me, and you're able to watch the tape, I guess, in some way, and see that, I'm sort of using a football analogy, but like, see that I didn't have the speed to keep up with guys, like God-given talent to keep up with some of these guys that are running routes, wide receivers, right, to play defense, to defend them as a defensive back. I just didn't have that. And I could train at that and practice that, and maybe I would have a prayer at it, but probably not, just because it's one of those things that it's very measurable versus like an art, filmmaking or something, where it's sort of subjective. And so I just had to like have that awareness of like, all right, you tried for a year at this. you're not going to get any faster. You might learn the game better and become a step quicker mentally and these things. But if you're cool with it, there is an opportunity to play this other position on the same team, you know, in the same games. It's just not as cool. You know, it's more, it's a thankless job. So less people want to do it, but it's necessary. It's important. And that was long snapping. So I just said, all right, well, I'm going to just go for that for a bit and see if I have the ability to do this. And it turned out to be okay at it. I mean, I worked at it really hard. I snapped 100 balls a day. You know, you just have to be willing to make the sacrifices and work towards these things. But you also, I think that's a key component here, is to have have awareness, and that only comes through humility, where you can like step back and say, yeah, maybe I'm not suited best for this role. Maybe it would make more sense to do that. And if you're cool with that, if you're not cool with it, don't do it. If it doesn't make you happy, like for me, I just wanted to play. I wanted to find a way on the field, especially at that point. I was like, I don't care what position, I just want to play. And it ended up working out. It got me, you know, I started for 3 years at Texas, and had an opportunity with the Seahawks, and, you know, it led to other things. But I think that's a big one that people aren't willing to have. Like, people don't like to swallow their pride. They don't like to feel like they wasted their time pursuing something, so they just kind of stick it out. Or they feel like the opposite of too afraid to pursue something because they're set in their ways. They've got this job, they've got those comforts and whatever. And I get that. If you're, you know, it's a different situation for everybody. I don't have, you know, family. Yeah, I'm a single guy. So like, it's a little bit different. I look at things a little bit different, but, you know, I made investments where I could along the way to take care of that in case that does happen, because I always want to live, I think, this way, where I'm able to flex and shift career trajectories like completely if need be, or if something that interest is there for me. Because when I look at careers, it's just it's doing something that I love, or at least around something that I love, you know, and then that I'm passionate about. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know. So much of it is just the time sacrifice, though, and the willingness to like work and not worry about failure, not worry about what everybody else is going to think. With the 100-mile thing, you know, running 100 miles, of course I trained for that, prepared for that, but I didn't run anywhere close to 100 miles in preparation for it. So I didn't even know if I could complete that. But I did know through prior training and other things I've done in life, like, I'm not adverse to pain, but I am okay with it. I mean, it does. I think people get afraid of it when they feel it. They think it means stop, you know, and I guess it depends on what kind of pain that is. If you're actually injured, that's a different kind of pain, but, you know, shortness of breath when you're running, or muscle failure or cramping, and these things, like, those are just maybe warning signs. But I think we're supposed to feel some of that, you know, we're supposed to feel all the emotions. And so I think physically we're supposed to feel different things too. We're not just supposed to be comfortable all the time, because after you complete something like that, even if it's just an hour-long workout in the gym or a 100-mile race, more often than not, you feel really good. You feel better. You feel mentally really good too, and like accomplished and energized and like proud of yourself because you didn't quit or whatever. So I think that all that stuff's important, but I think the pain thing and the embarrassment and shame that people put too much stock in, you know, they don't want to feel those things. Limits, wherever we put limitations on ourselves more than anybody else does. And you can say that for people that have some, you know, pretty severe physical disabilities, amputees, and people with, you know, other mental disabilities that still do incredible things and just aren't afraid and just go for it. And a lot of these people with physical disabilities, for instance, who, whether it was military or not, you know, maybe lost a limb And then they went on to run 60 marathons and climb the highest mountains in the world. And they never did that before when they had both their legs. It's like, what? It's just, it's now they don't have that fear. Now they're just like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to live with regrets. I'm going to do these things.
Yeah. Yeah. The people that you find at an ultra, it's something that I've prescribed to a few of my clients. I'm a clinician, and I prescribed to a few of my clients to go and volunteer at an aid station,
Right.
because the people that you see is never what you expect. You expect to see the tall, lean, ultra looking marathoner or something, right? Like, and then you see the 85-year-old grandfather, the person that doesn't look like they've ran a day in the life, the person with a prosthetic on their leg. You see all sorts of different types, and it's incredible to see it.
Right.
Yeah. So let's see. So I've met you before, not like this, in a setting similar to this, though, during the height of COVID, when MVP, this amazing program that you started. I'm a combat veteran. And so when everything was shut down and my practice was shut down, I saw MVP was going online, and it was one of those things where I'm like, I wish they had something out in NorCal. This would be great, but I could, there's nothing there. So when you guys went online, I'm like, okay, I'm going online, going to these, the Zoom calls online, and,
Right.
You were there, and, obviously Jake Laser and other folks, right, that would be there. And for the sake of anonymity, we won't say anybody else, but yeah, it was really cool to be there for that period of time. Then when my practice was able to open up here in California, then, I wasn't able to attend anymore. But yeah, I think it's a wonderful thing that is offered to veterans to be amongst people that they maybe idolize. Like, there's one particular person there that, as maybe somebody in like high school sort of thing, like idolize this guy. It was like, and saying, okay, he's just like me, and really, really cool. And so you want to talk about MVP a little bit, and kind of where it's at right now. Is it still online, and
Yeah.
what its plans are going forward?
Yeah, we've got so MVP stands for Emerging Vets and Players, as you said. And what we do essentially is we bring together combat vets and former professional athletes, and we help them find purpose and identity when they lose the uniform. We really just want to assist with that transition and beyond. And it's not necessarily right when you leave the game or leave the Army that you transition. Sometimes it's 10 years later. But yeah, like, so we're sort of recreating that locker room, because the number one thing that both of these groups miss is they miss the camaraderie. They miss the guys. They miss having people in their lives that they could depend on, and knowing that even if you don't like the person next to you, or you have nothing in common, you don't get along, they're willing to take a bullet for you or take a hit for you on the field. Like, they kind of put that stuff aside. That's pretty rare. It's not like that in most anything, really. And then the career ending pretty young. I mean, the average NFL career is 3 years. I'd say the average infantryman probably spends about that time in the infantry. And so you're pretty young, 20s, maybe 30s, and you're done, and you feel like will never be great again. You sort of peaked, and that's a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really why MVP exists. And we've got 8 chapters around the country in LA, Vegas, Chicago, Atlanta, New York, Seattle, Dallas, and Phoenix. And we're starting up now in Austin, where I live, as well as Jacksonville, Nashville, the Bay Area too. We have done a couple little things out there. And then in DC, we're getting a chapter going there. And then like Kansas City and New Orleans, we're trying to get that going as well, having conversations. So like, there's a lot of places, that we are working towards continuing to do what we're doing. And we have that virtual chapter as well, which I'm glad you found it. And that still does exist. I think virtual meets on Tuesdays in the evenings, but we meet up weekly in the gym. We train together for 30, 45 minutes, and then we huddle up afterwards, and it's just peer-to-peer coaching, open forum. We encourage vulnerability, and people are struggling. A willingness to talk through that stuff is important. But yeah, at the end of the day, knowing that I've got your back and you've got mine, it's nice to have in an increasingly isolated world.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really helpful. For me, I practice a ton of self-care, and I'm relatively, I stay, I would say, even keeled in terms of when society's going chaotic and pulling their hair out. I tend to find a balance in between things and find the extreme middle, which makes me maybe not a fan of a lot of people because like either side hates me, but
Radical middle, that's what I call it.
the radical middle. And I think even during that time, like it got me, I'm like, everything's shut down. Like, am I going to continue to be able to make a living for my family, all this stuff? And so when I saw online that MVP was going on, it is this thing I've heard about, knew about, and always, like I said, wanted more locally. But when it went online, I'm like, this is something I think I need to do. Everything's shut down. I don't really want to go to a 12-step meeting online. For me, that 12, I'm also a recovering addict and been sober for 17 years. So I've been to a ton of 12-step meetings, wasn't really wanting to do it online. Yeah. And so MVP was that kind of thing where I can go on there and, come in here where I'm shooting this now, do a little workout on video, and then go take it inside my house and bring the computer with me inside the house and sit there and just listen to other people kind of talk about where they're at. And the authenticity in there is great. And so, yeah, I really liked it. Kind of using that to bridge off of this. And then I know we got to go because of your time. We just talked about the radical middle, as you stated. And right now, this is a chaotic time. So as we're filming this right now, it's early October, and we got an election coming up. And my plan is to put this out on Veterans Day. So when this comes out, all of everything will have happened in terms of election. And what does that mean? Does it mean more chaos, less chaos? Probably more. And so when this comes out, you being the voice of reason for Colin Kaepernick during that period of time, and a lot of men that were hurting and confused and wanted to stand up for something but didn't know how to do it. Is there any advice that you have, as I'm putting you on the spot right now, any advice you have toward this chaos of either you're on my tribe over here or you're on my tribe over there, and if you're not, then you're a terrible human being? And the chaos that somebody might be feeling as they listen to the news, and it's going to be World War III coming up. This is going to be happening. This is going to be happening. All this stuff. What's your thoughts on all that?
Well, I mean, first of all, it's important to listen to everybody. To listen and listen with the intent to understand why people feel the way they feel, and I think to acknowledge that our experiences in life dictate our opinions, dictate how we vote, how we, what we're passionate about, and what we become angry about, and what we care about. But at the end of the day, like most of us, if not all of us, want what's best or what we think is best for our family, for our community, for our child, whatever that is. And sometimes that looks very different than what your neighbor thinks. And I think that's good. Like, that is a good thing. That's what truly makes America great, I think, is the fact that we are all over the map, politically, racially, religious. There's just so many differences that make us interesting and nuanced and advanced in some ways. And if we would just embrace that and appreciate that and, understand that there is no darkness without light. Things are not going to always be great, and they can't be, because then the greatness would be tarnished and we wouldn't feel as good as we do when good things happen. So it's like, it's hard to, especially when you're in it and when you're struggling, and you're kind of like things aren't going so well and you feel like the sky is falling. And because I'm one of these people too, I get that way. I definitely, I don't know if I have anxiety. I don't think I really have anxiety. I just get I get very frustrated, pessimistic, and that's okay. As long as I'm doing something about it and not just complaining, and doing something positive and doing something that also respects and or lifts up people that may think differently than me. I think that it's hard to do, but I think that's the key, I think. And it's, it is disheartening to look at our options right now, in my opinion, and not just for president, but just politically across the board. It's there's no respect between the two parties. Just none. It's just mudslinging and discrediting. And it's embarrassing as an American, as a veteran, to know that we fought for this kind of stuff. It's just silly. So I hope we get through it. I think we will. Because we have to. We are survivors after all. The human race will find a way. Life will find a way, as Dr. Hammond would say in Jurassic Park. So I feel confident in that. And you just got to keep trying, though. And yeah, I'm going to stand my middle ground and try to respectfully acknowledge and listen to people on the fringes and try to just empathize and understand they feel this way because something happened to them, or they experienced something, or they grew up a certain way, or they didn't have this and they want it, and you got to respect that. We've all got a different journey.
Yeah. I think you said it very well. Well, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. I know you're a very busy human being.
Oh.
You currently got a film going on and all that. So thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and coming on here on the Patina'd Podcast, dude.
Of course. And if folks, if you want to learn more about MVP, please go to vetsandplayers.org and check it out. And if you are a vet or an athlete and you want to join our program, if you're not in one of those cities I mentioned, we've got that virtual chapter where Kenny found us, so you can do the same thing. And the movie, give the movie a watch. It tells more about the story of how MVP started, the genesis of it. It's a scripted film. All the veterans portrayed on screen are played by actual vets. A lot of the athletes you'll probably recognize, from Michael Strahan to Tony Gonzalez to Randy Couture, 6-time heavyweight champ of the world, who's also a vet. Howie Long. I mean, it's pretty cool. It was a pretty cool project, considering we shot it during COVID. And it's out on Prime and Apple TV and Paramount Plus, if you have those. And then the movie I'm working on right now is an 80th anniversary D-Day documentary. So this one is not scripted, but it's the voices of 97 to 105-year-old World War II veterans and kind of telling their story one last time. So that probably won't be out till next spring, or maybe even summer, but we're working towards it right now. So, but yeah, thanks for having me on, brother. And I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Patina'd Podcast. There are other shows that emphasize resilience, but my intent is to normalize personal development through embracing challenge by interviewing the common man and woman, the person that you and I can relate to. If you are someone who wants to soak up the insights of normal people doing extraordinary things, please subscribe. If you know somebody who is overwhelmed by fear and complacency, please share this podcast with them. I'm your host, Kenny Hill, and I run a private practice near Sacramento, California called Recovery Hill. My website is in the description tab along with my social media links.
Familiar face, we wear our struggles, no trace erased. In vulnerability, we find our place. Rust is gray, not decay, which Chasing shadows